Go.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. This is Getrude Matshe again here in rainy Wellington, New Zealand. Yesterday, I was talking about the sun. Today, the weather's changed again. But I have another amazing guest coming to me all the way from the United States in Texas. Jenny, hi. How are you?
Hi, how are you? I'm great. I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Please introduce yourself, say where you are, how old you are, and share your story with us and inspire us this morning.
Absolutely. So, Gertrude, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be able to have the power of technology that can take us anywhere in the world. It's so amazing. So I'm here headquartered in Austin, Texas, in Central Texas. Today it's a frigid day for Texas, which is unusual. I've lived here for about 6 months. I came from Southern California. Brought my company, a training and leadership development company, here to really engage leaders, particularly leaders in the tech sector, and also women leaders, and becoming their best selves and building great companies. So that's where I am today. And at 52 years old, I've learned the power of the pivot. So one of the things that I think so many of us, young women and those of us who are a bit more seasoned, is that we start on a career trajectory, a career path, right? Oh, I'm going to grow up, going to be, whatever we say we're going to be.
Yes.
And we go through a series of events and experiences in our lives that take us on different paths. And sometimes they're paths that we never really realize we're going to be on.
Yes.
And that's the beginning of my story. So I grew up actually in a very extremely rural environment. There was 175 people in the town that I grew up in.
Oh, wow.
And our aspirations, were pretty limited. To see a movie, we had to drive about 5 hours to be able to see a movie. To have fresh vegetables, you better be growing them yourself, otherwise it didn't happen.
Wow.
And so in that, what was I going to be when I grew up? Well, what I was influenced by was the United States Marine Corps. Marines, and the story of the Marine Corps was very prevalent in the area that I grew up. And so a little bit later than normal, which is 18 years old, people who normally go in the service if they choose that, I went a few years later at 20, and I embarked on this extraordinary adventure of being a Marine and being trained as a leader of Marines. And for those of your audience, your listeners that may know something about the Marine Corps, it's really a mythical, in a lot of ways, a very mythical institution. It's the smallest of the 5 United States branches of the service. It also has the fewest number of women of all services. Okay. And so when I served, there were about 150,000 Marines around the world. So globally, that was the number of people we had. And of that, there were 9,000 women.
Oh my God.
Right. You can imagine the ways and the things that women had to navigate, and that I had to navigate to be able to be really successful in that environment. And I was extremely successful. But I learned how to be a leader in that space. I learned what it was to be really mission focused. I learned what it meant to build great cultures. I learned what it meant to build great teams in a military context. The other thing I learned was, how to be a woman in a male dominated environment. And what that meant then for me was really thickening my skin, right? Really becoming almost having this really thick armor that was almost impenetrable. And that armor is how I learned to lead, and it is how I went into leadership in a lot of different environments. And the reason I say that is that I think a lot of women leaders that I work with now and that my company works with, we end up kind of being taught and trained that leadership has to look a certain way. And it really looks the way men lead. That's kind of the model that we're given. It's right. Gertrude, like we have to lead, we're strong and we don't show any emotion and we're tough and all of this. And the challenge, part of what I learned as I went along in my different career paths and as I pivoted into different areas that I was interested in learning more about or doing more work in, is that form of leadership really keeps people separated from us.
Yes.
And so when I left the Marine Corps, I went into working in the nonprofit sector, so an NGO type sector, for those who are in international context, and worked in training and leadership development in a number of different places. And through these experiences, this power of the pivot continued to kind of really guide my life. And so at one point in all this work, I began to ask myself, if I took all the experiences I had up to that point in my career, where could I have the most impact?
Yes.
How could I move the most number of people? Where could I have the greatest social impact? That was really the question I had. And my answer at about 30, I think I was about 34, 35 years old, was education.
Okay.
And so that's a pivot, right? It's a dramatic pivot away from what I was doing. I was working in the national nonprofit at that time.
Okay, so before you go into that part of your life, let me just take you back a little bit. You said something really interesting about the pivot. A lot of times women are thrown into situations where they are forced to make a career change, or they choose to make a career change. And before I lose my train of thought or forget this, I want to know how you successfully transitioned from one environment to the other so successfully. What 3 key teachings can you give us today about pivoting from one environment to another?
I would say the most important thing that I've learned, and I've pivoted again. So the most important thing I've learned is be curious. Okay. It's so important to be curious. That's the first thing about wherever you're going. Or you may not know where you're going, but be curious about something that might be completely and radically different from what you do now.
Yes.
The other thing is take risks. Like, it is really important to take risks. So I don't know that much about the technology sector, as an example. Yes. I use pieces of technology, but what I've become extremely intrigued about is how technology is literally rapidly changing our world.
Yeah.
And so what I've looked at in that space, like, I don't know how to build an app, but I'll probably learn because I want to start to understand it. So that being curious and taking risks. Now, when you take risks, you have to be comfortable with dropping back. So that may be financially. You have to be comfortable with dropping back from where you were earning. And I've gone through this a couple of times. Okay. You may need to be comfortable in dropping back from a social circle, or whatever. It can be lots of different things. You have to also be comfortable with people saying, you can't do that. That's not possible. How could someone your age do that?
Yes.
All of those are myths, and they're all stories.
Yeah.
They're all stories.
Other people's fears as well, because
other people's fears.
Yeah,
absolutely.
People bring in their own baggage and try to put it on you.
Absolutely. So I would say the being curious is a super energizer.
Yeah.
Taking risks is the other super energizer, and also what I'm struggling with right now, and what I'm with the new kind of way that I'm trying to navigate is really making sure that I don't appear to be the full expert, which is hard. Okay. Right? Because we have a tremendous value on expertise and knowing the right answers. And I've learned in coming here, I don't know anything about the tech industry, that people are using terms like AR and VR, and I'm like, I have no idea what that is. Yes. And so asking for help or asking questions is something that I'm stepping better into. I will not say that I've mastered it by any stretch of the imagination, but pivoting, what I've seen is that the fourth thing I would say is pivot with no regret.
Okay, so don't look back.
Don't look back. If you've pivoted, and because like a lot of what we do in the world, we make it up. Like, I know that might really sound, like, what? I've been invested, but we make it up because often someone may not have our particular experiences, and our lived experiences, our life experiences actually shape what we look at or what we think about, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just really important to go, okay, I'm gonna try this, I'm gonna do this. And it doesn't mean that there aren't tough days. I have some days I'm like, what am I doing?
Yes.
Right. What am I doing? And as an entrepreneur, I really ask myself, like, really, what are you doing? But
one of the things that I love about what you just said about showing your ignorance and not trying to show that you know everything, I think it's a sign of extreme intelligence when you know what your limitations are and you admit it. I created a company here in New Zealand when they were filming the movie King Kong. Peter Jackson had done Lord of the Rings and he was filming King Kong. And they were looking for African extras for this film. And I knew a lot of African people and I know how to build databases. And I thought I could match that and create a casting agency. Anyway, I went ahead and did something I've never done before.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know how much to charge them. Yeah. And do you know, my clients told me and gave me examples of how other agencies were invoicing and charging. But by showing my ignorance and being honest, people will handhold you, they will support you. If anything, they love working with someone new and fresh.
Yes, yes.
And people don't realize that.
It's very true.
Sorry, continue.
No. It's very true though. And it's like and it's this balance, right? Because we're trained and we're taught to have the answers. We're trained and we're taught to be the experts. We're trained constantly. And I think as women, it's even more so, that training is even more intense, or our need to be validated, to be like, it's even more intense. The reality is that we have to find a balance between our competence and creating an opportunity for people to pour into us. And it's difficult. Like, I'm literally having to test it out now because I am looking at working in the tech space with leaders. And so I don't want to pretend that I understand the tech space, but I also don't want to be brushed off as not knowing anything, right? So I went to Harvard University, so I use, at certain times, I use my experience in the Marine Corps, and I just a little snippet, or I use, and I went to Harvard University as a little snippet because I know that there's people attach certain understandings to that.
Okay.
Use it judiciously, obviously, but there's different pieces like that I think are really important to utilize as you pivot. Pivoting is, if we all started to look at the ways that we move through life, we realize that we're pivoting into new directions. It's kind of what you just said, Richard, with your agency that you created. You pivoted into a space for which you had no
idea.
Right? But you were able to create it. Right. You were able to create it.
Happened. People said to me, how did you do that? How did you know how to do it? I didn't know how to do it. I just took a risk. I saw an opportunity, took a risk, jumped in feet first, and learned to swim when I got there.
Exactly. And that is the most powerful. Like, I think that what I continue to see and what I continue to challenge myself to hold on to is that if you think about everything around us, someone took a risk to create it. It doesn't matter. You can name a company. You can name any company. The fact that we have airplanes, someone took a risk, and that was here in the US, someone took a risk to figure out how to build this thing that could go through the air, right? Didn't know. Everything around us, someone has taken a risk. And so, but in all of this, what we begin to lose, and particularly for women leaders and women in general, and I believe women are always leaders, whether we're leading in families or we're leading companies, we're always leading, is that we have started to remove ourselves from risk-taking and put ourselves more into this sort of like, safe, protective stuff. The thing is that we're built for so much more, and we can do so much more, which is why I think this whole power of a pivot is so incredible. Like we can pivot into different industries. We can see a need, we pivot, and we can create something in that, right?
Wow.
And so that's what I've seen that has been, for me, the things that have been really helpful in this pivot space that I find myself in.
So how do you maintain your femininity in these environments of leadership? Especially when you were in the Marine Corps, how do you still be you as a woman in that environment? And now in all of the leadership roles that you hold and you've been involved in, where do you get that balance?
Honestly, I didn't do it well then when I was younger, because there's conversations that I get to be in now as someone who's an elder, and I would call myself an elder in terms of, if I look and I'm sitting with someone who's 20, I am an elder to them, right? And so I have a different level of wisdom. I'm a wisdom keeper now. And so as in that role, I walk in the rooms now, I don't even think about perceptions of others, because they don't matter to me anymore.
Yes.
And that's just a matter of going through all of the agonizing stuff that we go through as young people and young women, and as we continue to mature in our place. I think
is it because you feel more comfortable in your own skin now?
I think I've learned that I mean, this might sound terrible, but I really have learned that all of this is manufactured. It's all created.
Yes.
So I can create whatever. I mean, okay, so then that means that I can create it too.
Yeah.
Right? If it was created and put on me to begin with,
yes.
How should women conduct themselves? How should men conduct themselves?
Yeah.
If it was all created to begin with, that means I can create it
whatever way
in a way that fits me, right?
Yes.
And so I walk into rooms now with multi-millionaires, billionaires, or people who aren't. People are very humble. But I walk in as my own
version of
I'm just me.
Yeah.
Right? I don't spend a whole lot of time worrying about a lot of these perceptions. One, I can't control anyone's perception of me. I have definitely learned that.
Okay.
Right? I have definitely learned that when I'm worried more about your perception of me, that it stops me from actually being my best self, or for me being successful, because I'm too tied up in worrying about what you may be thinking about me. That's a lot of bandwidth. That's a lot of mental energy, you know? And so the age does help, definitely. But I also think that for women in particular, that we can speak this into younger women, and that we can be the containers around younger women to help them move forward much more confidently.
Yes.
If we support them and support, who young women are, and feed into that. The same with those of us who are elders or wisdom keepers. Like, we also, same thing. Like, some of us are still really tied into worrying about how we're perceived, or worrying about we're getting older. Look, I can't stop that. Right?
Yeah.
Right. I can't stop that. And so then it needs to be an asset. I need to look at as an asset, as a strength, and also share as an asset and a strength.
Can I ask you to wind down with 3 nuggets of wisdom you can share with people this morning? First of all, think of what you would have told your younger self based on what you know now.
I would say that I would have told my younger self that you have many lifetimes in one lifetime. And so do everything that you want to do. Do whatever you feel like, whatever is of interest to you, do it. Because it's really...
It's not one thing.
It is not one thing. We can have multiple careers, and radically different careers.
Yes.
We can have multiple relationships along the way, right? My mother has been married 3 times, and they've been over 10, 15-year marriages.
Okay.
Right? So, and I use that as an example because sometimes we're like, oh my God, my life is over if someone gets divorced. No, you're not. There are more lifetimes inside of this one lifetime. People should move. People should travel. Oh my gosh, travel.
I was
I
actually
have
talking
traveled,
to
but traveling.
a friend of mine this morning who I encouraged to go on a trip to Bali from Africa. She was so scared and was holding back, and she wants her life to change. And I had read a quote in a book the other day that if you want change, you need to move. You're not a tree.
Absolutely.
And people
Absolutely.
will stay stuck in one place, want
Yes.
to change, but they don't move.
Yes.
So,
Travel is the most powerful. Travel, I think, is one of the, and travel international. Don't travel to like down the street. Travel international. Move, relocate to different places because you get to discover things about yourself you never realized, and you wouldn't discover them unless you either travel internationally. You have a passport, or you move in a completely different place. You know, I've moved across country from one coast to another in the US and then back to the middle. And it's a completely different environment. So travel is really powerful. And then just understand that we have more lifetimes inside of this one that we are given from the birth to death. We have more lifetimes inside of that we can do anything we really want to do. And if you want to do something, go do it. That's probably my own mantra. If I want to do something, go do it.
Thank you so much for this interview. You have so inspired me this morning.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you. This is good.
Wow. Wow. So how can people get hold of you?
So I have a best-selling book called From Empty to Overflow, 5 Radical Actions Women Can Use to Rejuvenate, Grow Profits, and Inspire People. And so the website to get to that is www.fromemptytooverflow.com. So it's from empty to overflow.com. You can go there, get access to the book. I think there's a little happiness checklist or something like that on it. But just something for women, particularly for women leaders. I'm really committed that women leaders can lead in a way that keeps them feeling rejuvenated. Because as you know, Gertrude, women are the backbone of the world, and we are also the ones who are called to change the world from the way we see it now to a world that really works for everybody. And so that's a huge piece for me, that we need to be, in order, because we are the engines of the world. In order for us to do amazing things, we have to first take care of this engine called our bodies, ourselves, our spirits, so our spiritual self. So From Empty to Overflow talks about that, and is really powerful. It's a powerful book.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Have a fantastic day. What's left of it?
Thank you.
Keep in touch with me.
I will, absolutely. I will, absolutely. And I'll have a couple people I want to send your way. So thank you. This is great.
Thank you. Thanks, Jenny.
All right, Gertrude, take it easy.